look, I think, into the coming days. You could see an odd shower or two, maybe an odd one tomorrow, maybe a few on Monday, but yes, mostly a dry story. But we are seeing a drop in temperatures both by day and by night. And this is the reason. So we've got low pressure to the east, high pressure to the west. That high pressure keeping us settled, but we are seeing that chillier air being drawn down across us. So it's a change in air mass. And as we head out there this evening, I think, yes, you've got some cloud around, but some clear spells, and temperatures will tend to drop away a bit lower than we have seen. So for most of us, values 10 to 12 degrees, but away from London itself, I think you could see some spots getting down into single digits. And as we push into tomorrow morning, I think some bright weather to be had, a shower or two possible, but largely a dry story. Hopefully some reasonable spells of sunshine, but more of a breeze around than today, a northerly or a northwesterly, drawing down that chillier air. So temperatures for tomorrow, I think, a couple of degrees down compared to today's values. And as we push into tomorrow evening, well, with that cooler air in place and starry skies overhead, those numbers continue to fall away. So I think the weekend will see some quite chillier nights, chillier than we've seen in a considerable period, I suspect. So in the capital itself, 9 degrees or so, but if you venture away from the capital to more rural spots, we could see mid-single figures, I suspect, on the cards. In general, though, a lot of dry weather, some sunshine to be had, probably the best of that on Saturday. A bit of a breeze around, which will always add to that cooler feel. Maybe a few showers as we push into Monday. Take care.
Memories of my mother. Prince William opens up about how difficult he found yesterday's procession.
I think the walk yesterday was challenging.
It was a walk, a reminiscence of the same steps the princes took at Princess Diana's funeral, a moment that brought back memories. More details are released about the biggest state funeral in generations as thousands continue to file past the Queen's coffin in quiet reflection. Full preparations are underway and rehearsals continued overnight. The British at their best, the queue that shows no signs of abating.
But experiencing it there live is incredible. It's just incredible. Something to cherish and remember for the rest of your life. And that I will do.
We'll have all the details released today regarding Her Majesty's funeral on Monday, as well as the personal touches added by the Queen herself, also tonight.
Liv touched so many people's hearts and was loved and adored by everyone. She will never be forgotten.
Olivia Pratt-Corbell's mum says goodnight to her daughter at the 9-year-old's funeral.
Janice has treated me more generously than I ever would have dreamt, and now I must recognise when it is time to end my competitive career.
And another tennis great bows out. Roger Federer announces his retirement.
This is the ITV Evening News with Charlene White in Westminster.
Good evening from Westminster, where as tens of thousands of mourners continue to queue to say goodbye to the Queen, final preparations are being made for her funeral. More details of Monday's huge state occasion were released today. The service at Westminster Abbey, which is just to the right of me here, will be attended by 2,000 guests. That will include world leaders as well as key workers and volunteers recognised in the Queen's birthday honours. Her coffin will then be carried past Buckingham Palace on the same gun carriage used in her father's funeral and travel by car to Windsor. There, after a lifetime in front of the cameras and a funeral watched by the world, she would be buried in private, joining her beloved Duke of Edinburgh, her father, mother and sister, as Emma Murphy reports.
Through darkened streets, they rehearse a ceremony, the like of which has not been seen in this country for 6 decades. A state funeral to honour in death passing of a queen so respected in life. The gun carriage, which carried Queen Victoria, 3 kings and a prime minister, now being prepared for a monarch who served longer than them all. Upon those who signed to serve her, the responsibility to bring solemnity and dignity to her farewell. The last act in their service to a woman who devoted herself to the service of her country. The monumental passing from one era to another, reflected in the simplest of signs. HMQ, replaced by HMK, His Majesty the King. The Queen approved every detail of her funeral. Those carrying out her wishes seek to reflect the uniqueness of her reign.
The state funeral is the largest, most formal, the highest ranking funeral you can get. So absolutely everything will be out for Her Majesty and everybody will be in absolutely their best.
On Monday morning at 10:44, the Queen's coffin will leave Westminster Hall for Westminster Abbey. The King, along with his sister and brothers, will walk behind the state gun carriage, accompanied by the Prince of Wales, the Duke of Sussex, and other members of the royal family. The state funeral will begin at 11 a.m. and will be conducted by the Dean of Westminster. The Archbishop of Canterbury will deliver the sermon. The hour-long televised service will be attended by more than 2,000 people, including the extended royal family, world leaders, and foreign royalty. The Prime Minister will deliver a lesson before the service concludes at 11:55 with a 2-minute silence, followed by a lament from the Queen's piper. At 12:15, the royal family will then follow the gun carriage as it's drawn down Whitehall, through Horse Guards Parade and along the Mall, retracing the Queen's final journey from Buckingham Palace. At 1 p.m, the coffin will be moved to the state hearse to be taken by road to Windsor, arriving around 2 hours later. There, the coffin will be driven along the Long Walk and accompanied into St George's Chapel by members of her family, led by the King. During the service, the imperial state crown, the orb and sceptre will be removed from the coffin by the crown jeweller. At 7:30, in private, with the family present, the Queen will be buried alongside her husband in the King George VI Memorial Chapel, along with her parents and sister. In Windsor, where as the widowed Queen she mourned the Duke's death alone, they will be reunited once more. 73 years of marriage, and now an eternity at rest together. Emma Murphy, ITV News.
Well, our correspondent Romilly Weeks has joined us in this studio. And Romilly, I mentioned earlier that there were some personal touches added by the Queen for the service on Monday.
Yes, Charlene, that's right. Just as the Duke of Edinburgh had a hand in every element of his funeral service, so the Queen has been consulted on every element of hers as well. I think we were quite surprised on Tuesday when we learnt that extended to the design of that glass-topped hearse that brought her coffin back from Northolt to Buckingham Palace. But on Monday at the funeral service in the Abbey over there, the music, the readings, they will all be personal to the Queen. And when we hear the piper, the sovereign's piper, play a lament at the committal service in St George's Chapel and walks away as he does so that the music, the piping fades away inside the chapel, that is something that the Queen personally wanted. As the Earl Marshal, the person who's overseeing all the funeral arrangements, what will be one of the greatest state ceremonials this country's ever seen, as he put it, the funeral must be nothing less than paying a fitting tribute to an extraordinary reign.
Absolutely, and we also had some details this afternoon, didn't we, about a family vigil tomorrow?
Yes, that's right. I think one of the most striking images, and there have been so many over the past week, was the moment in Edinburgh in St Giles's Cathedral when the Queen's 4 children took the vigil on the corners of her coffin and stood there with their heads bowed. And we had it confirmed today that tomorrow here in Westminster Hall, over there, as the light fades at 7:30 p.m, the Queen's 4 children once again, including the King, will take their position beside the coffin of their mother in a final, powerful, public act of respect and love for the Queen.
OK, Romilly, thank you very much. Well, this afternoon, the Prince of Wales revealed that walking behind the Queen yesterday had revived the painful memories of the funeral of his own mother, Princess Diana. His comments came as he and the Princess of Wales thanked thousands of mourners outside Sandringham House and viewed the sea of flowers left in tribute. From Sandringham, Rebecca Barry reports.
This is where he'd spend every Christmas with his beloved Granny, as he called her. Now the gates of Sandringham have morphed into a memorial for the late Queen. A week ago today, the Prince of Wales, as he's now known, was rushing to Balmoral as his grandmother fell ill. Since then, he's become a grieving grandson and the next in line to the throne. It's a lot to take in. The crowds had come to pay their respects, but they got much more. Prince William opening up about just how traumatic recent days have been.
Doing the walk yesterday was challenging. Brought back a few memories.
Walking behind his grandmother's coffin, he revealed, brought back memories of his mother's funeral.
I said I thought his mother would have been proud of him, especially after everything that, they'd been through. And he said how difficult it was yesterday with, reminding him of his mum's funeral, and obviously Princess Diana's funeral. So that was lovely and it was very emotional.
Others left in shock by the encounter.
And I just got loads of handshakes of the future king and the Princess of Wales. And it was just all crazy.
Overwhelming?
Yeah, very.
84-year-old Mary will cherish this handshake with a future Queen.
I was 14 when the Queen came to the throne, but I'm so sad that we've lost our Queen. She was absolutely marvellous.
Baby Louis was born on the day of the Platinum Jubilee and is named after the royal couple's son.
When Louis is older, that he will be his king, and the day that the Queen actually died, we did get a letter from Buckingham Palace from Kate and William to congratulate us on Louis. It's a bit of history both times for him, really.
Prince William is now one step closer to being our monarch, and in moments like this he is setting the tone for what we might expect in the coming years and in a not so distant future under his reign.
But for these young royalists, it's simply a moment to remember.
He shook my hand and I solemnly declare I will never wash it.
Such a public role, so difficult during such personal grief. But sadly, it's not the first time this prince has been through that. Rebecca Barry, ITV News, Sandringham.
Elsewhere, Prince Edward and Princess Anne visited Manchester and Glasgow respectively to see tributes left to their mother. The Earl and Countess of Wessex appeared at St Anne's Square after viewing condolences left at Manchester Central Library and Cathedral. Meanwhile, Princess Royal visited the city chambers in Glasgow. She also met with public and council officials as well as representatives of organisations of which her late mother was a patron. Let's see what's coming up ahead of the funeral on Monday now. Tomorrow, the King will visit Wales, attending a service at Llandaff Cathedral. At 7:30 tomorrow evening, the King will join his brothers and sister at a 15-minute vigil in Westminster Hall, as Romilly was just talking about. And the period of lying in state will come to an end on Monday at 6:30 in the morning. And that is when the doors of Westminster Hall, just behind me, will close to the public. But until then, the very British tradition of queuing continues. The Elizabeth line, as it's been called, is very much a mix of reflection and celebration of the life of a monarch who dedicated her life to public service, as Paul Brand discovered.
At 6:10 this morning, they'd already been queuing through the dark, and yet, in waiting together, found plenty of light.
You look like a man who like a mint. Yeah. Give me a few. There you go. Here for a purpose, which is coming together with other people in a like-minded nature, just to pay their respects. And everybody's been very well behaved, and eating my mints, more importantly. Yeah.
You cannot take in any food with you, open or closed.
Shepherded by scouts and stewards, we found friends at the front of the queue who'd just never met until now. So you didn't know each other before the queue?
There's 6 of us. Yeah, no, and we've all close bond now, haven't we? Exchanged phone numbers.
New WhatsApp group and everything.
Yeah, it's really good.
I saw Harry and said, oh, I like those trousers. And then we talked and realised we were both going to the queue. So that was it. We've been together for since 6:30 this morning. We've done really well.
Yeah, we have. Not a single bad word.
No.
Others had braved longer journeys with those they love.
Set up at 3 o'clock this morning.
3 o'clock this morning from Nottingham?
Yes.
Yeah, none of us are tired.
No?
None of us are tired. Not even one bit.
How's the queue been?
Madness.
Madness, yeah. But it's important, isn't it, for you?
It is, isn't it? We want to pay our respects, don't we?
Yeah, and then we want to pay our respects to the Queen when we get there.
It's coming up to lunchtime now, and those just reaching the front of this queue have been waiting since dawn, but all the while, the line behind them has only been getting longer. They'd come to see one sight, but snaked past plenty of others. The queue stretched back to the London Eye, alongside St Paul's Cathedral and down to Tower Bridge, opened by the Queen's great-grandfather. How long have you been queuing for?
How long have we been queuing for? About a couple of hours.
Yeah, a couple of hours.
Yes.
But you obviously felt it was worth doing this today.
Absolutely, yeah. But we're nearly there, and it's our respect, isn't it, for her?
Absolutely so.
Where have you come from today?
From Switzerland.
You came all the way from Switzerland?
Yes, yesterday.
Northern Ireland.
Wow, you flew over for this?
Yeah, this morning. Came over this morning and flying back this evening, so I really hope that I get in.
Many won't get there till nightfall. At 6:30 this morning, the queue stretched for 2 miles from Westminster Hall to Blackfriars Bridge. At 10 a.m, it was 3 miles long as far as HMS Belfast. And by 4 p.m, it had stretched to 4.2 miles, way past Tower Bridge to Bermondsey. You're in the queue?
Yes, lovely. Yes.
I think it might take a while, though.
We are prepared for that.
You ready for that long wait ahead of you?
Oh yeah, mate. Yeah, but well, I wouldn't miss it for nothing. Yeah, God bless you. Yeah. Sure, it's going to be sorely missed.
By the time they reach the front of what's been named the new Elizabeth line, some will have waited 8 hours for these sacred few seconds.
It's very hard to witness, I think, what we just witnessed. It's been fun walking through the queues and everything, and then it's very different and somber in there.
Experiencing it there, live, is incredible. It's just incredible. Something to cherish and remember for the rest of your life. And that I will do.
Well worth that wait.
Absolutely. I always loved it, and I would love it forever.
So overwhelming, but she looks beautiful. The day has been wonderful. Met some brilliant friends, and she just looks so nice.
You're really glad you did it? You're really glad you made it?
Yeah.
She'll be back down on Sunday for the funeral.
And I'm coming back down on Sunday. Oh, worth the wait.
Tonight, there are 60 hours left to join the Queen's queue. What more British way to mark this nation's mourning? Paul Brand, ITV News.
Well, that queue continues to grow tonight. It's now 4.9 miles long, stretching all the way along London's South Bank to Southwark Park. Well, Ellie Pitts is about halfway along near the Millennium Bridge. Ellie, what's the mood among people there tonight?
Charlene, I'd say the mood is one of quiet resolution and pride to be in the queue. There's an understanding about how long it's going to take now that the government is advising it's around 8 hours. But people understand that and appreciate that that's how long it might take to pay their respects to Her Majesty the Queen. Well, Kerry and Gladys have met in the queue, as many people have. How are you both feeling, and why is it important for you both to be here tonight?
I think good. I think we're all positive. Everyone's quite positive in the queue. There's some really lovely people. And I think it's just honouring Her Majesty and showing a respect, but also being part of something that is historic, that we'll look back on in, I don't know, 40, 50 years to come.
Gladys, for you?
For me, I feel the need to come here because Her Majesty came out of her deathbed to carry out a service for the nation, and that really touched me. So to hear 2 days that after that she's passed, I felt, no, there is a need for me to come and pay homage to her and say thank you to her. And besides that, I'm Ghanaian, I'm British, and I'm a citizen of the Commonwealth. So I feel there's a need for that to be recognized as well. So we are all part of one Commonwealth organization, and we have to be here to support the Queen.
What kind of emotion, just briefly, Kerry, do you think you'll feel when you enter Westminster Hall?
I think it'll be quite somber, and reality will kick in, I think, because I think it still feels it's not real. And yeah, I think it'll be quite overwhelming. At the moment it's very positive and everyone's kind of in it together, but I think it'll be quite a sombering moment when we go in.
Thank you both very much. Well, Gladys and Kerry have a long evening ahead of them of queuing here in London, but both are determined to do it to say a personal goodbye to the Queen.
Ellie, thank you very much. On our website, you can, of course, find all the details you need if you want to come and join the queue or see the funeral procession on Monday. Or if you're unable to make it, we are streaming a feed from Westminster Hall on our website, so you can pay your respects from home. That's at itv.com/news. Many Commonwealth countries will be looking forward to one day welcoming the new king, especially Fiji. It may be a small nation and a republic, but it had a big impact on the Queen's life and was somewhere she visited 6 times. And the islands also played a significant role in the procession which carried her coffin into St Giles's Cathedral in Edinburgh. One of the pallbearers is from Fiji and serves with the Royal Regiment of Scotland. Our correspondent John Irvine spoke to his family and heard about Fiji's deep connection with the Queen.
The British have left quite an impression on Fiji. 10,000 miles from home, the sports of rugby and cricket are loved and appreciated in these islands. So too is the monarchy, as represented by the Queen. The park they are playing in is called Albert, after her great-great-grandfather. The grandstand behind them is where she sat during her visits here. This road hasn't changed much.
Then came a royal drive through the town
since the recently crowned Queen Elizabeth II travelled down it during her first trip here in 1953. It was a 6-month tour around the world. Back then she was the head of state of enough countries to ensure the sun never set on the empire.
The token of obeisance is the offering of a whale's tooth.
She would be a keen tourist throughout her reign, with Fiji one of her favourite destinations. Many Fijians simply adored the Queen, and the feeling was mutual. She came here 6 times, which puts Fiji joint 4th on her list of most visited foreign countries, behind only Canada, Australia and New Zealand. A big part of her travels in life, Fiji has also had a role in the Queen's final journey. One of her pallbearers is Fijian, third along on the right, Penny Tabuna of the Royal Regiment of Scotland. It's not easy to get to the young soldier's home village here in Fiji. There are no roads leading there, so the only way to reach it is to follow the Rewa River. 21-year-old Private Tabuna really has come a long way, not least in terms of distance travelled from this, his home, the village of Vutia. We went there to meet his father, who's probably the proudest person in Fiji today.
I feel great. I feel happy. The first time for me to hear that he's the one that was chosen from the big country like that. Yeah? And I cry. I cry. The whole nation, Fiji, I can see they're all proud. They call me, then they ask me, is that your son? Yes, that's my son.
At one point, the interview was interrupted by a call from his soldier son back in the UK.
He told me that he was tired, he wants to sleep, he wants to rest, the big job that I've done. And he told me that Major called him, his Major, called him to make a celebration for him. And he attended, just a small party, just to thank him for the great job that he had done.
The UK's relationship with Fiji has been complicated. In the years since it became a republic in 1987, things have hit the rocks sufficiently hard to see Fiji suspended from the Commonwealth 3 times. But this nation's regard for the Queen has never wavered. Sophia Kinemaui, just behind Her Majesty in this photo, met her 3 times and helped arrange one of the 6 visits here.
We wouldn't have been where we are without the British monarchy. And we cannot thank the monarchy enough for what they've done. The British Commonwealth, a British government, the UK, they mean very much to us.
In the Fijian capital, Suva, you can book the hotel room with the balcony from which the Queen and Prince Philip waved to the crowds back in '53.
Yet another ovation from the people of Suva.
It was a moment recreated in exactly the same place by the Duke and Duchess of Sussex during their visit here 4 years ago. The Fijian flag is at half-mast and still a quarter British. This is only one of 4 countries that continue to include the Union Jack in their national emblem. 35 years after independence, this nation's motto remains: fear God and honour the Queen. John Irvine, ITV News, Fiji.
We've got plenty more of the day's news still to come, including a community brought together in grief.
Liv touched so many people's hearts and was loved and adored by everyone.
Mourners in Liverpool wear a splash of pink at the funeral of Olivia Pratt-Corbell, the 9-year-old shot by gunmen in her home. The businesses still waiting to hear what support they'll get with energy bills and wondering whether they'll survive. And the amazing astronomical sight in the skies over Scotland and Northern Ireland. To King Charles III now. He's currently at his Highgrove estate in Gloucestershire, his first day off from out of the public spotlight since the death of his mother a week ago. It's his private home and somewhere the King has lived for the past 40 years. Chloe Keedy has been in the town of Tetbury meeting his neighbours.
Behind the gates of his Highgrove home, King Charles is taking a day away from the cameras for the first time in almost a week. In the town of Tetbury, they are reflecting too. People here are mourning a monarch, but they also want to show support for the new king, who just happens to be their neighbour.
I think it'd be wonderful because he's such a kind, caring, compassionate man. Yeah.
But people at this pop-up cafe say they also feel a personal connection. Francis was one of a lucky few to get invited to a dance at Highgrove House, celebrating the Queen's Platinum Jubilee.
And he said, was I going to dance? And I missed a trick there. I should have said, he said, you dance, and I should have said, you asking, I didn't.
And he spoke to everybody. Nearly everybody came to every table and made sure he spoke to each individual and asked questions. I did invite him to the Friendship Cafe, but then he said he would try and make it, but...
He's not come yet?
Not yet!
The King, as he is now, may not often be seen round town, but certainly the traders I've spoken to on Tetbury's High Street say his presence here is very much felt. This butcher has long supplied meat to Highgrove House, and the town's association has brought them plenty of other customers too.
And we get people from America, Australia, China, everyone around the world comes to Highgrove, and they always come in, get a pork pie, a Scotch egg or something like that, pate.
So you're hoping he stays?
Fingers crossed he stays. So he's now like the King of Tetbury, so it's got a nice ring to it, hasn't it, really?
But wherever King Charles chooses to spend his time, I'm told there will always be a place for him here.
I think he very much feels part of the community here. I think he feels as much our neighbour as we are to him as well. And we will support him in whatever he chooses to do, but his home here at Highgrove has always been a safe haven for him.
As a prince, he has clearly charmed this town. Even if being king takes him in another direction, he can bank on the people of Tetbury for their support.
Chloe, Highgrove has no doubt been a sanctuary for the King today, but he's still working, isn't he?
Yes, that's right. In the very detailed planning for the aftermath of the Queen's death, there was always a day set aside at this point for the new King to take some time away from public duties. Don't forget that over the past week he's been up to Scotland, to Northern Ireland, back down to London, and tomorrow he is going to Wales. So yes, this is a pause in those public duties, but I'm told not a rest. I understand he's already receiving his red boxes of state papers and working in preparation for his new role as king. Here on the other side of the gates, people have been coming all day and leaving flowers, not just in memory of the Queen, but for the King as well. Families have been here, children have been coming, and several people we've spoken to have said they've come specifically today because they know the new King is in there and they want him to know that they are thinking of him.
Chloe, thanks very much. Now let's get an update on what's making the news tonight. Details of the Queen's funeral on Monday have been released, including the fact that she will be buried beside her husband, Prince Philip. In London, people are continuing to queue for hours for the chance to pay their respects. And Prince William has spoken about how walking behind his grandmother's coffin yesterday brought back memories of his mother's funeral. Well, the Queen's death has put public and political life on hold, but it will return shortly after next week's state funeral. New Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng is to hold a mini-budget where he'll spell out plans to get the UK economy growing again. And part of that could be lifting the cap on bankers' bonuses. It's a controversial move and has already seen him accused of sending out the wrong message as many suffer in the cost of living crisis, as our deputy political editor Anushka Asthana reports.
Like millions of others, pub owner Stephen Hay has been watching coverage of the Queen's passing, and he thinks it's right that the government has gone quiet for now. But he's also scared.
Extremely anxious. Sleepless nights, frightened all day.
2 weeks ago, Stephen told ITV News that energy bills rising from £10,000 to £56,000 a year might force him to close his beloved Wickham Arms. Since then, the government has promised it will support businesses, but he's waiting for the details.
We're stuck. We're in a rock and a hard place. I'm glad there's this period of mourning. But on Tuesday of next week, that's when somebody should make a release and let us know a little bit more so we can actually feel confident about the future.
In Westminster, preparations are underway for the Queen's funeral on Monday.
All parliamentary business has been suspended as a mark of respect. But
down in Whitehall departments, officials are still working on policy so that next week ministers will be able to address the cost of living crisis. And so on Tuesday, the government could lay out more details of its energy support package, including the level of support for businesses. On Wednesday, when the Prime Minister is expected to deliver a speech in New York at the UN General Assembly, MPs will return to Parliament. On Thursday, their focus will turn to the NHS and severe delays, with a statement from the new Health Secretary. And then on Friday, the new Chancellor is expected to deliver a mini-budget, including promised tax cuts. They will come on top of a £2,500 energy price cap for consumers funded by borrowing. But this economic analyst says even that will not take away all the pain.
When this mourning period is over, we'll be back facing this huge cost of living crisis. The government have written a blank cheque for helping households with the impact of higher energy prices, but the key thing here is it's still going to be a very difficult winter ahead.
And it's not just the price of gas and electricity, but food too. Back in Yorkshire, Stephen can't believe the PM has rejected a bigger windfall tax on energy giants. Liz Truss is also considering scrapping the cap on bankers' bonuses, a gamble on potentially unpopular policies that she believes will drive economic growth.
Anushka, the new Chancellor says he's keen to encourage growth, but helping bankers isn't going to go down well with a lot of people, is it?
No, it's not. And in fact, if you talk to anyone who's involved in focus groups, for example, then they will tell you that capping bankers' bonuses and, in fact, the idea of a windfall tax on the profits of energy giants are incredibly popular policies. In fact, that's one of the reasons that the former Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, went to have a windfall tax in the first place. Therefore, reversing policies like that clearly could be very unpopular. And the Labour Party are delighted about it. I spoke to one senior figure in the Labour Party today. They said they'd had a message asking whether or not the Chancellor was actually working for them. Now, that said, they are cautious about the idea that they could be painted into a corner as a party that supports taxes on business. And as for Liz Truss, I think these policies go to the very heart of what she believes on the economics, that if you cut taxes and you deregulate, then that could stimulate economic growth. That's why she thinks that's the right policy at the moment. Now, I should say a lot of economists don't agree with her. They worry that tax cuts could be inflationary right now. But all through her leadership campaign over the summer, she made very, very clear that she didn't agree with what she called failed economic ideas, including in this government. So she is going at it a different way, a way that may seem less popular. It will all depend on whether or not she gets that growth. Now, I should say right now, all the political parties have gone quiet as a mark of respect for the Queen. But after this, and as we head towards the next election, I think this will be a big dividing line in British politics.
OK, Anushka, thank you. Monday's state funeral being declared a bank holiday has seen many NHS hospitals forced to delay operations, affecting some patients who'd already waited months and in some cases years to get treatment, as Martin Stew reports.
I was hoping after Monday I wouldn't be taking this anymore.
Phoebe Snedker has been waiting to have surgery to treat her endometriosis for 2 years.
I'm in a medically induced menopause at the moment because I've had to wait so long.
Hot flushes and bladder issues at the age of 21, the price of staving off crippling monthly pain. An operation on Monday should have helped, but has now been cancelled because of the Queen's funeral.
Well, I can understand respect and I can understand mourning. I just don't know how anyone thinks it's justifiable to see the state of the country at the moment and think it's okay to use all these resources.
Thousands of other NHS operations and appointments have been cancelled on Monday too. The knock-on result, surgeons say, of schools closing for the bank holiday.
They have got kids' commitment, and if they are unable to attend, for that reason, there will be cancellations. And therefore, for the NHS organisation has to shift staff from non-urgent elective cases to the more urgent and cancer cases.
It's not just the NHS which is disrupted. 15% of Heathrow flights will be moved or cancelled to keep skies over Windsor and London quiet. Driving tests have been parked, supermarkets will be closed and Royal Mail services suspended. Even fast food fryers will be switched off, McDonald's stores staying locked until 5 p.m. Shopping centres like Westfield and the Bullring will stay open, but the same can't be said for all the shops inside.
Feel a world away from the big city.
Following a backlash, guests will be allowed to stay at Centre Parks. Some food banks will close, but have been giving extras in advance to keep everyone fed. Volunteers in Wimbledon have rallied to keep this site open.
We normally close on bank holidays, but thankfully, due to the response, we had numerous people who offered to volunteer so that we could remain open on Monday.
Public service, you could say, to honour the public's greatest servant. Martin Stew, ITV News.
And on our website, you can find a full list of the supermarkets and shops that will be closed on Monday. That's at itv.com/news. The mother of Olivia Pratt-Corbell said an emotional goodnight to her daughter as hundreds turned out for the schoolgirl's funeral wearing pink, her favourite colour. Cheryl Corbell said the 9-year-old touched many people's hearts and would never be forgotten. Olivia was fatally shot in her home in Dovecot last month, but detectives are still trying to find her killer. From the service in Liverpool, our North of England reporter Sangeeta Lal reports.
Olivia's friends and family by her side one last time. In silence, they remembered the chatty little girl who used to play here. Olivia's mother clutched a teddy as her daughter's coffin was carried inside. And hundreds gathered as her service was played out to a community grieving the loss of a 9-year-old girl.
Olivia was very chatty and bubbly and would talk for England. She was very particular, even down to her socks. They couldn't be too high or too low. They needed to sit just perfect. She would have made a great lawyer, as she had an answer for everything.
This was a chance for Olivia's mother to pay tribute to her daughter, still wounded from the bullet that passed through her wrist and hit Olivia in the chest when a gunman chased another man into her home, an attack condemned today.
We should have learnt by now, of course, that we don't need this kind of violence, and it doesn't do anything positive to help us be better people.
And how do you feel about the community's response here? So many people turned up to pay their respects.
I think it's what we expect in Liverpool. People are like that. They care for each other.
So too do Olivia's school friends, not present at her funeral but able to pay tribute at a memorial they've made, a place to always remember Olivia, whose family today said she'd never be forgotten.
I will never say goodbye, but what I will say is good night, love you, see you in the morning. Mwah.
A final message from a mother still hoping for justice, something this community wants too. So many who are struggling to understand how a life was taken so soon. Sangeeta Lal, ITV News, Liverpool.
To some other news now, and Russia's President Putin has made his first public admission of differences with his key ally, China. At a meeting with China's President Xi, he acknowledged there were concerns from Beijing about the war in Ukraine. It comes as a Ukrainian counterattack has reclaimed large areas of territory from Russian forces in recent days. Robert Moore reports.
Amid the significant military reversals in eastern Ukraine, President Putin arrived in Uzbekistan for a summit that is aiming to deepen Moscow's alliance with China. Now clearly a lifeline for the Russian leader. President Xi himself joined the summit, a rare visit overseas, suggesting that China remains committed to backing the Kremlin diplomatically. But there are also clear hints that Beijing has mounting concerns about Ukraine. At their meeting, the first since the beginning of the war, Putin promised he would address those concerns. Far to the west, Ukrainian troops continue to consolidate their hold on their newly liberated territory. And it remains unclear whether Russia will seek to counterattack or launch even more retaliatory strikes in revenge.
Morning, Ursula. Nice to meet you.
Good to see you. Certainly in Kyiv, just as China and Russia boost their alliance, so Ukraine and the European Union grow ever closer, with significant financing now coming from Brussels.
I am very glad that today the European Parliament now has voted positively on the 5 billion loans.
In this bitter conflict, alliances for both sides are suddenly gaining new prominence. A hand gesture telling the world where Ukraine sees its future. Robert Moore, ITV News.
Emergency services in Jordan have rescued a baby from the rubble of a building. Rescue workers have been searching for survivors after the residential building collapsed in the capital Amman on Tuesday. 10 deaths have been confirmed and authorities have charged 3 people over the collapse. Hundreds of flights have been cancelled ahead of a strike by French air traffic control workers tomorrow. Ryanair says 80,000 passengers will be affected. British Airways and EasyJet have also announced cancellations. And the billionaire founder of the fashion brand Patagonia has given away his company to charity. Any profit not reinvested into the firm will go to fighting climate change. Tennis legend Roger Federer has announced he's retiring after playing one last tournament. The 41-year-old said it was time to listen to his body after struggling with a persistent knee injury. He said he loved the game of tennis and promised he will never leave. Here's Neil Connery on one of the greatest players of all time.
Roger Federer's first Grand Slam title came at Wimbledon in 2003. He went on to win a record of 8 men's singles victories at the All England club as he powered his way through a career which has delivered 20 Grand Slam titles. Today, one of the greatest players the game has ever seen announced he's retiring from top-level tennis after the Laver Cup in London later this month.
I've played more than 1,500 matches over 24 years. Tennis has treated me more generously than I ever would have dreamt. And now I must recognize when it is time to end my competitive career. This is a bittersweet decision because I will miss everything the tour has given me. But at the same time, there is so much to celebrate. I consider myself one of the most fortunate people on earth. I was given a special talent to play tennis, and I did it at a level that I never imagined for much longer than I ever thought possible.
Federer's final Grand Slam triumph came in 2018 in the Australian Open. At 36, he became the second oldest man to win a major singles title in the Open era.
He's one of the greatest that we've ever seen, not just in terms of the achievements and the amount of titles that he won, 20 Grand Slams, being world #1, the 103 titles as well, but also the greatest in terms of how he hit the ball, how he moved with such grace and fluidity and artistic and balletic qualities.
His name is Roger Federer!
As Wimbledon celebrated its centenary this year, Federer received a rapturous welcome, joining other greats of the game. He insisted today his love for the sport remains as strong as ever.
Finally, to the game of tennis, I love you and will never leave you.
Neil Connery, ITV News.
From a star to a fireball now, and one which lit up the sky across large parts of the UK last night. The UK Meteor Network, which monitors such sightings, said it received almost 800 reports from Scotland, Northern Ireland and Northern England. It was visible for 20 seconds, but it's not clear exactly what fell to Earth, as Mark McQuillan explains.
Over Scotland and Northern Ireland, something special, lighting up the night sky and igniting debate as to what it actually was.
Is that a shooting star?
I think so.
Oh my God!
Whether it was a shooting star, a meteor or something else, hundreds reported the sighting. One of those lucky enough to capture it was Joe from Dunmurry in Belfast.
It looked like it was quite low and then it was moving quite slowly, but as I said, I thought it was a firework at first. It was moving, then it turned to sort of like a bluey-green colour, almost turquoise. And then I thought, right, this is time to get the phone out and capture it. So that's whenever I pulled the phone out and run around the front of the house, and luckily I was able to record it then.
An exciting moment for Joe and others who filmed it, and for the experts analysing it.
The reason we think it might be space junk, though, is because of how long it lasted for. So those videos lasted for about 10 seconds of this fireball. Typically, your fireball meteor lasts no longer than about 6 or 7 seconds. So the fact that it lasted as long as that is kind of interesting, makes us wonder. It's a bit of a puzzle to solve.
A puzzle experts will be working to piece together over the coming days. If it was a meteorite in Scotland, it would be the first there in more than 100 years. That may be unlikely, but whatever the outcome, it certainly sparked excitement and intrigue during its brief appearance. Mark McQuillan, ITV News.
We return to events here in Westminster now, and I'm joined once again by Romilly Weeks. And Romilly, we can see the queues continuing to file into Westminster Hall there, and that finishes the morning of the funeral, doesn't it, at 6:30 in the morning, and the funeral itself will be a mix of public and personal, won't it?
Yeah, that's right. The funeral will start with the coffin moving the short distance from Westminster Hall just over here to Westminster Abbey just over there, and it will contain every bit of state ceremonial that this country can muster. The guest list is huge. It will include 500 dignitaries expected from around the world, and of course it will be televised as well around the world. And then that procession through London, I think we can safely say from what we see here that the crowds will be absolutely huge. And then when events move to Windsor, it does already become more personal. The congregation is smaller, still 800, but it will include members of the Queen's household, both past and present. And then the burial itself, when the Queen is reunited with the Duke of Edinburgh, her husband of 73 years, the man she described as her strength and her stay. That will be for the royal family's eyes only. That will be absolutely private. And I think that idea of a reunion is something that has been very much at the forefront of the minds of all generations of her family. King Charles referred to it, and the Princess of Wales even said that Prince Louis's first thought when he heard about the death of his grandmother was, well, at least she'll be reunited with Grandpa now.
Bless him. Look, you did mention King Charles III there. Let's look ahead to tomorrow, because we haven't seen him today. He's been in Highgrove, obviously, but he returns to the public tomorrow.
Yeah, that's right. He will be in Wales, in Cardiff tomorrow, on the final leg of his tour of all four nations, before returning to London for the vigil. And then over the weekend he will be hosting all the world leaders, the royalty, the emperors, the prime ministers who will be arriving here from around the world, with receptions in Buckingham Palace. And I think if this queue is the living, breathing evidence of the respect with which the Queen is held in this country, the global great and good who will be arriving here on Monday for the funeral, evidence that that sentiment is not limited to this country alone.
OK, Romilly, thanks very much. Well, as you've been hearing, Monday's monumentous events will finish at another of the Queen's royal residences, Windsor, and Amy Lewis is there.
Well, the Queen was often seen out riding her horse here on the Long Walk, and was filmed countless times travelling up and down this famous route. Now, here in Windsor, they have hosted some of the nation's biggest events, but I think what we will see here on Monday will eclipse anything that has come before. They have capacity here to host 96,000 people on Monday on the Long Walk, but they are preparing to host 150,000 people. They think they will see the largest numbers here ever. Now, if they do see those numbers, there will be overspill areas where they can people can go and watch on large screens. The council today have told me that they would like people not to pitch tents, ideally not to travel by car and to arrive early. Now, each day we are still seeing thousands of people coming here to the Long Walk and putting flowers outside the gates of Windsor Castle. Each evening they are being taken inside the castle grounds in preparation for Monday, for when the Queen comes home for the last time.
Amy Lewis reporting there. Well, finally tonight, one of the Queen's many passions during her life was for her beloved corgis. She was surrounded by them from a young age and loved spending time with them, but They weren't just her pets, they were also her secret weapon, as Martha Fairley reports.
On Her Majesty's Secret Service or off duty with the family. Wherever the Queen went, her faithful Pembroke corgis were always by her side. They were regularly seen in public, stepping on and off the royal train, often with a helping hand from the young royals. And as frequent flyers, the corgis were a familiar sight, hopping down from the royal jet from Balmoral, while the unfortunate aides were left to round up any dogs who dared to deviate from the travel plan. But they would also join the Queen incognito.
She drove herself from Buckingham Palace to Windsor Castle with the dogs on board in a beat-up old Vauxhall, and those 10 dogs were just like you and I going on holiday to the country. And she was disguised in a headscarf, and nobody knew that the Queen was driving herself up and down the M4 motorway.
The Queen's love for the breed dated back to her childhood. Her father brought home a corgi called Dookie, who was soon joined by more, often trying to upstage Princess Elizabeth and her sister.
As for Dookie, their dog, he's asking, am I in on this trip?
Their inquisitive nature and charming expressions guaranteed them a starring role in royal family photo calls. The Queen bred her corgis as family pets, but she used them as her secret weapon over decades of royal diplomacy. They provided the perfect icebreaker, mingling with New Zealand rugby players, attending official audiences with politicians, and refusing to pose with the Rugby World Cup winning England squad. When the call came to play their part in the London 2012 Olympics, neither the corgis nor the Queen could resist. But the dogs weren't always on their best behaviour.
Originally, corgis were bred to herd livestock, nipping at the heels of cattle and horses. And true to type, some of the Queen's corgis also had a bit of a reputation for having a go at the legs of passing members of the royal household.
For the millions of well-wishers who lined the routes of royal visits, a corgi was one sure way to catch the Queen's eye. In Paris in 2002, she spotted Windsor Quiz, the puppy she'd given to corgi enthusiast Mary Davies as a gift in return for the loan of her stud dog. Mary says for the Queen, the corgis were an escape from the pomp and ceremony of official duties.
Oh, I think they were a huge part of her life. It was a chance for her to be just herself and not have to worry about royal protocols and things. You know, she could just relax and be with the corgis.
They were, without doubt, among the Queen's most loyal subjects, and she, their most devoted of owners. Martha Fairley, ITV News.
And that's all from us in Westminster for now. Raggy will have news at 10, but from all of us on the team here, goodbye.
Good evening to you. A mixture of sunny spells and patchy cloud as we end the week. A good deal of dry weather as we go into the weekend, but staying a little breezy across the north and the east for a time. We've got a northerly airstream, a brisk northerly breeze feeding in these showers across the north and the east as we head through the night, easing tomorrow as high pressure tends to become a little more in control, and here mostly fine, settled, dry conditions as we go into the weekend. Plenty of autumn sunshine as we slide into Saturday. Temperatures where you'd expect given the time of year. Clearer skies to end the day across central zones, a little more cloud cover in the south, and a brisk breeze further north and east. Blustery showers here across northern and eastern Scotland, sliding through the eastern side of England as the night progresses. A few scattered blustery showers further west. Otherwise, a dry night, and under the clearer skies, temperatures dip a few degrees, particularly in rural spots of Scotland and northern England. And here, a chillier start for those up bright and early tomorrow morning. For the rest of us, a very autumnal start, clear and crisp from the word go, but the mist and fog kept at bay with the brisk breeze for many of us. Those blustery showers in the north and the east and further west will tend to fade. Generally speaking, a good deal of fine dry weather, plenty of perky sunshine in many locations, but we've got those blustery downpours on and off across northern and eastern Scotland, occasionally sliding into Lincolnshire and East Anglia. Quite a chilly breeze around the coast. Otherwise, a fine dry end to the week. If you're heading to the capital, plenty of sunshine, highs of 18 or 19 degrees. And in the sunshine, it'll make all the difference. A fresher feel in the south compared to the last few days, a much cooler feel across the north. Into the weekend, plenty of sunshine, blue skies, staying quite breezy across the north and the east, but a good deal of fine, dry weather to come.
And now on ITV, it's Emmerdale.
Can they watch Emmerdale in Emmerdale? If they can, I could watch someone in Emmerdale watching Emmerdale whilst watching Emmerdale.
Don't be confused. Confused.com, proud sponsors of Emmerdale.